Hey guys, today is Friday, October 23rd, and today we are going to talk about the phylum Cnidaria. Yesterday we talked about the phylum Porifera and we talked about sponges. Today we're going to move on and we're going to talk about Cnidaria. You have commonly probably called these your entire life jellyfish. They're not all jellyfish, but we're going to talk about some of the differences between them. So on our cladogram, we had a single-celled ancestor, which was our protist. And then we developed the ability to have multicellularity, and we had the porifera. So the porifera, or the sponge, doesn't have any specialized tissues. It just has a group of cells working together for a common cause. So now we've developed specialized tissues on this cladogram of life, and the first phyla that's going to appear is going to be the phyla Cnidaria. And you can see on this one, we have specialized tissues, but you can also see that Cnidaria has radial symmetry, or their symmetry goes in a circle. So general information, Cnidaria have the presence of specialized tissues. That's what makes them unique. They are able to swim, they can respond to stimuli, and they can engulf prey. There's over 10,000 species of Cnidaria, so there's a lot of these guys out there. And all of them are marine, meaning they all live in salt water of some kind. The body plan of Cnidaria is really cool. So they have radial symmetry. They have an oral surface, which is the mouth area. And they have an aboral surface, which is opposite the mouth, or what we would think of as kind of like the back. That's going to be the aboral surface. And they only have two cell layers. Sorry, my camera's off center. They only have two cell layers. They have the ectoderm, which is this outer cell layer. They have the endoderm, which is this inner cell layer. And then they have this mesoglia, and this mesoglia is the inside area, and there's no cells there. It's just gelatinous, and this is what expands to form that bell of the jellyfish that we typically think of. So there's only cells on the very outside and on the very inside. In between those two places is just a hollow space. Jellyfish can be in two forms. They can be in a polyp form or in a medusa form. The polyp form is attached to the ground, and that aboral surface, essentially the jellyfish sits on its back, and that aboral surface is on the ground. In the medusa form, it's bell-like, and it's the upside-down polyp, and this is like the typical jellyfish you think of. Jellyfish can exist in both of, or Cnidaria can exist in both of these phases, or they can exist in just one or the other. So some live their complete life as a medusa, some live their complete life as a polyp. Most go through both of these body stages at some point in their lives. They have a central mouth area that's surrounded by tentacles. And both of them have this central mouth and anus area. This mouth opens up into a gut. And this gut is called a blind cavity or a blind entrance. There's only one entrance to this cavity. So it's blind cavity. It goes in, it comes out this same cavity. There's just this one big opening. Over here, there's just this one big opening. So you've got your epidermis, and then this is your mesoglia. This is your gel-like layer. Nematocysts are the stinging structure found on the tentacles that they use to capture their prey. And we're going to talk more about them on this slide. So digestion. Jellyfish are definitely carnivores. So they use their nematocysts, which are fluid-filled capsules containing a thread. So if you look down here, this is the nematocyst. And I'm going to make this full screen for a second just because it's easier to see. You won't see me, but you'll see this full screen. So you've got this nematocyst down here, and it's a fluid-filled capsule, and it has a thread. And that thread is ejected quickly. It's typically a pressurized, so when the pressure changes on this outside, it forces this thread with a barb on the end to shoot out and grab the prey or stick to the prey. That capsule and that thread can either be sticky, it can be armed with spines, it can wrap around the spray, it can be wrap around the prey, it can be toxic, so there's lots of different things. And after ingestion, the food passes into this open gut area where it's digested. An extracellular digestion takes place outside the cells, and then intracellular digestion takes place within the cells lining the gut. So both kinds of digestion take place. And there's a link to a video. So on your own, you can watch this video. It is the TED Ed of how a jellyfish stings, and it explains a little bit more about the cnidocytes and the nematocysts. So it's pretty interesting. I would suggest you watch it. And let's go onward and upward. All right. So jellyfish lack a true brain or true nerves. They don't have a central nervous system. Like I said, those nematocysts or stinging cells are typically fired by a pressure change. So by something touching them or not touching them. Kind of like a landmine. If you think about somebody stepping on a landmine, that landmine isn't going to explode until they take their foot off of it and the pressure changes. So they do have nerve cells, and they have what's called a nerve net. And it transmits impulses in all directions around the body. It's a simple system, but it does allow for some sophisticated behaviors. So sea anemones can tell whether others are around or are cloned from the same pod as them. So they know with what around them, they know whether it's just like them or whether it's slightly different. Some medusa, so some jellyfish that are in that medusa shape, have primitive eyes or primitive sensors to light. And they also have what are called statocysts. And these are calcareous bodies, so little bony bodies in a fluid-filled chamber with small hairs. And it gives them a sense of balance. It's the same thing in your body that tells you you're motion sick or you're seasick. It is a statocyst it's a type of statocyst in your ear or your inner ear. That's what some jellyfish have. So they're able to know if they're upright or to the left or to the right or flipped upside down. Kind of really cool. So class Hydrozoa is the first class we're going to talk about. So within the phylum Cnidaria, there's lots of different classes. Class Hydrozoa have tiny colonies of polyps attached to, or are tiny colonies of polyps. They're attached to pilings, shells, seaweeds. Each polyp serves a special function. The reproductive polyps produce medusa. Those medusa release the gametes. The fertilized egg develop into swimming larvae, which are called planula. Those planula settle on the bottom. They go through metamorphosis, and they become a polyp. So this is what it looks like here. And to kind of give you a better idea, this is what a real hydra looks like. So this right here is the real hydra. And they actually move by going through this tumbling motion. So going head over heels, over head over heels, over head over heels. So they're really actually pretty interesting creatures. The marine ones are more complex than the freshwater ones, which is what I just showed you a picture of. There's also a type of hydrozoa called a siphonophore. And this is a colony of the polyps working together. So I showed you a picture of a hydra that was freshwater. These are marine hydrozoans. And a great example of them is a Portuguese manivore. So some of the polyps work together to form a float on the top of the water. Some of the polyps form these tentacles that are used to capture the prey. And the toxins from the nematocysts in these guys can produce painful reactions in swimmers. So they start with one body or one polyp. It reproduces asexually and it gets bigger. And each zooid is developed to form one particular task, whether that task is feeding, whether that task is reproduction, or whether that task is movement. So all of those polyps work together to form one Portuguese manivore. So what we see as one is actually an entire colony of polyps. So its multicellular building blocks behave like cells and like independent organisms. So you can look at this up-close view of the Portuguese manivore right here, and you can see all the individual polyps. And then here are all the different parts. So here's your crest, your pneumatophore, which is your gas-filled polyp, your gonozooids, which are used for reproduction, your gastrozooids, which are used for digestion, your dactylozooids, which are used for locating and catching prey, and your stinging tentacles at the bottom. The next class we're going to talk about is a Scyphozoa. The medusa is the dominant stage of the life cycle in these guys, and when you think about jellyfish, this is what you'd most typically think of. The polyps, if they do occur in these species, are very small, and they release the juvenile medusa, and then the juvenile medusa grow. Some of these guys, like the lion's mane jellyfish, can get up to 6.5 feet across at the bell. That's as big. That's bigger than most adult men. To kind of give you a thought, the jellyfish's medusa, or bell of the top of the jellyfish, is bigger than most adult men. These are some of the most dangerous animals on Earth, some of the most dangerous marine animals, especially because of their sting. Their sting can kill grown men. A lot of the lifeguards in parts of the world where they have more of these scyphozoas actually do have to carry a special anti-venom and analgesics and things for people to get them stabilized to transport them to the hospitals. The next one is anthozoas, or class Anthozoa. This is where the majority of cnidarians are. They are solitary or colonial, and they lack a medusa stage completely. They're the most complex polyp. Their gut is partitioned into septa, so it's partitioned into different. The picture I showed you only had one big chamber for the gut. These guys have multiple sections in their guts. Sea anemones are your most common colorful anthozoans. And gorgonians are another type of anthozoan. They can include sea fans and corals. So they all do belong to the phylum Cnidaria. Last but not least is a separate phylum completely, and they're called phylum Ctenophora. I include them with the jellyfish because most people think they are cnidarians. They don't realize that they're a completely different phylum. So these guys are called your comb jellies. If you've ever been to the beach in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, these guys wash up on the beach all the time. You've probably seen people pick them up and throw them at each other, or pick them up and look at them. They can't sting you. So they're marine only. They have radial symmetry. And they have a gelatinous body. What makes them special is they have 8 rows of these ciliary combs. And their cilia, and so remember, they're those little hair-like projections, and they're bound at the base like a comb. So they're little 8 combs, and they beat in waves, and they can be used for swimming, or they can be used for moving. And at nighttime, they reflect light, creating a prismed multicolor effect. They can be a few millimeters big, up to 6 feet big. There are different species in this phylum. And they are carnivores. They capture their prey using 2 long tentacles, armed with sticky cells. So these guys do not have nematocysts. So these guys cannot sting you. Growing up as a kid, I always thought it was really fun. First time people had been to the beach, I grew up there, so it was kind of a normal thing to me. But people who'd never been there before, I thought it was great fun as a kid to pick these guys up and chunk them at people. They usually freaked out because they thought you were throwing jellyfish at them. You weren't throwing real jellyfish at them. You were throwing ctenophores at them. So, and this is a picture of the ctenophores in the background. You can see them like radiating and glowing. It's really kind of a cool concept. Today on Schoology, you don't have much work. You have the same work that kind of setup that you had yesterday. So you have an article to read about Cnidaria with pictures included. Miss Neal's getting pretty good at this. So this one has all of the pictures included. Oh dear. Sorry, I clicked all the way back. I'm sorry. And that's a sponge. We're not on October 22nd. We're on October 23rd. You've got a labeling worksheet. Again, use your PowerPoint. Use your PowerPoint to help you do the labeling. You should all be able to get a 100 on that. And then you have a Cnidarian generalized worksheet. You can use the TED Ed. You can use your PowerPoint. You can use the reading. You can use any of those things to answer these questions. So there's not many of them. There's only 7. Should be pretty easy for you to do. That's all we have for today. Don't forget to do your exit ticket and your attendance, and have a good weekend. I will see you all on Monday.